Welcome to Manage Engine Password Manager Pro, the password management software from Manage Engine. In short, we call this product as PMP. This presentation is to give you an overview about PMP. Before starting the demo, I would like to give you a very brief introduction about PMP. PMP is a privileged password management solution for storing the passwords of enterprises. Using PMP, you can securely store thousands of privileged passwords. IT administrators will be able to take full ownership of passwords stored by them. In multi-administrator work environment, the passwords can be selectively shared with others on need basis. From a single, centralized console, administrators will be able to change the passwords of remote resources. You can get complete record of who accessed what passwords and when. In short, administrators will be able to take full control of the enterprise passwords from a central GUI. What you see on the screen now is the web interface of PMP. The first operation that one has to do after installing this software is to create accounts for the users who will be using PMP. There are three ways in which you can add a user to PMP: manually adding users, importing users from Active Directory, and importing users from LDAP. This is how you have to add a user manually. After filling in the details such as first name, last name and others, you need to select the user role. Here, PMP provides four types of user roles: administrator, password administrator, password auditor, and password user. Administrator is the one who will have absolute administrative privilege in the system. Absolute privilege does not mean that they will be able to view all the passwords. PMP functions based on the principle of ownership and sharing. The one who adds passwords to the system becomes the owner. The owner alone will be able to view the passwords added by him. Others will not be able to see them. If the owner wants others to view the passwords, he can share the passwords. Password administrator is similar to administrator, but without the privilege to create accounts for other users. Password auditor is the one who will just be viewing the audit records and other reports in the system. Password users are the ones who will just have the permission to view or modify the passwords that are allotted to them. If you have requirements to make any administrator as a super administrator with privileges to view all the passwords in the system, you can choose to do so by selecting this option. Super administrator role is purely optional. Depending on the requirements of your organization, you can take a decision on having the super administrator. PMP provides the option to integrate external identity stores like Active Directory or LDAP in your environment and import users from them. Additionally, users who have logged into the Windows system using their domain account can be allowed to log into PMP directly. You can also leverage the authentication mechanism of AD or LDAP too. There are 4 steps involved in completing the process of importing users from AD and assigning them necessary roles and permissions in PMP. The first step is to provide credentials and import users from AD. The next step is to assign appropriate roles to the users imported. The third step is to enable Active Directory authentication. The final step is to enable domain single sign-on. Another option to create users is to import them from CSV. If you have the details of the users in the text file, you can import all the users to PMP on a click. After creating accounts for the users, the next step is to add your resources to PMP. We use the term resources to denote any application whose passwords are being maintained in PMP. There are 2 ways in which you can add your resources to PMP. Manual addition for adding resources one by one, and importing resources for bulk addition. This is how you will be adding your resources manually. DNS name or IP address is required here because when you change the password of the resource in PMP, it should get changed in the resource. To establish connectivity with the actual resource, DNS name or IP is required. If you want to add a Windows resource, select Windows as the resource type. These are all the resource types that are supported by PMP for remote password reset. Resource description, department and other details are for your reference. If you want to access the resource being added over the web, you can specify the URL for the same. The next step in the resource addition process is to add the accounts for the resource. For example, if you are adding a Windows server, within that resource there will be many accounts. You can add all the required accounts here. Make sure that the passwords of accounts you enter here, and the ones in the actual target systems, are the same. The next step is to provide the administrator account details for carrying out remote password reset. While the first two steps are the same for the addition of all types of resources, the third step alone would differ based on the resource type. For instance, in the case of Windows resources, it is just enough if you specify the administrator account. On the other hand, for remote password reset of Unix resources, PMP first uses the remote login account to log into the target system. Then, to carry out password reset, privilege elevation is needed. PMP can either su as root, or use sudo to execute the remote password reset commands. So, you will have to specify the protocol for connecting to the device, the authentication method for remote login, and other details. For bulk addition of resources, you need to have the details of the resources in a text file, and you can import them to PMP. The resource addition process is over now. Let us now have a look at the password management process in PMP. For example, this is a resource available in PMP now. Within this resource, there are many user accounts. This is how you can view the password stored in PMP. You can also copy the password to clipboard. You can also do remote password synchronization. That means, when you change the password in PMP, the password in the actual resource will also be changed. To carry out the password change in the remote resource, you can choose to deploy PMP agents in the remote resource. PMP also supports agentless password synchronization too. The agent mode requires the agent to be installed as a service and run with administrative privileges to perform password changes. The communication between the PMP server and agent takes place through TCP for normal information and HTTPS for password transfer. So, communication paths must exist between the server and agent. For the agentless mode, you need to supply administrative credentials to perform the password changes. You can choose agent mode if you do not have administrative credentials stored for a particular resource in PMP, or if you do not have Telnet or SSH running on the resource, or if you run PMP in Linux and want to make password changes to a Windows resource. In all other cases, you can choose the agentless mode. To change a password, all that you need to do is to specify the new password here. Apply password changes to the remote resource denotes remote password synchronization. Remote password synchronization is supported for resource types such as Windows, Windows Domain, Windows Service Accounts, Windows Scheduled Accounts, flavors of Unix and Linux, Cisco and HP, ProCurve devices, MS SQL Server, MySQL Server, Oracle DB Server and Sybase ASE. You can also open a direct connection to the remote resource directly from PMP automatically. This process eliminates the need for manually copying and pasting the passwords to open a connection. This feature will be highly useful in the case of managing the credentials of websites. Just by clicking the URL here, you will be able to log into the website directly. As mentioned earlier, PMP works on the principle of password ownership and sharing. Passwords are visible only to the owners. Others can view the passwords only if they are shared. This is how you will be sharing the passwords. You can share all the passwords of a particular resource with specific users, or you can share only specific passwords with specific users. In the resource level sharing, you can choose to give three types of permissions: view-only permission, or view and modify permission, or giving absolute permission to manage the resource. After successful authentication into PMP, users get access to the passwords that are owned by them or shared to them. When storing very sensitive passwords, quite often administrators wish to have an extra level of security. In some other cases, administrators wish to give temporary access to passwords for certain users for a specified period of time. There are also requirements to give users exclusive privilege to passwords. That means, only one user should be allowed to use a particular password at any point of time. When more than one user is required to work on the same resource, problems of coordination arise. Access control and concurrent usage would help resolve such issues. To achieve all the above requirements, PMP provides the password access control workflow. Once you turn on the access control for a resource, the users requiring access to the password will have to send a request to the administrator for the release of the password. If the administrator approves the request, the user would be allowed to view the password. It will be made available for the exclusive view of the requester for a specific time period. After that, the user will not be permitted to view the password. At the end of the process, the password will be automatically reset. This feature is called as Password Request Release Workflow, or temporary passwords. It is also known as one-time passwords. This feature will come in handy in scenarios like providing temporary access to a database to the developer. For carrying out various operations in bulk, you can classify the resources into resource groups. Resource groups can be added in two ways. Either you can pick individual resources and group them, or you can specify a criteria for automatically grouping the resources. For example, you can group all the resources belonging to the resource type Windows as a resource group. Once you create a resource group, you are ready to perform various enterprise-class password management functions. You can share a resource group with a user, or a user group. When you do so, all the resources that are part of the resource group will be shared. You can also create a scheduled task for carrying out password reset at regular intervals. For example, you can change the passwords once in 15 days. PMP carries out the password reset automatically without any manual intervention. PMP sends notifications on password reset before and after the execution of the scheduled task. Password action notification is another important feature of PMP. Whenever certain actions are done on passwords, you can choose to receive notifications. For instance, when you have shared passwords with other users, whenever someone views a password, PMP can send notifications to the owner of the password, or to any other desired user. Similarly, when someone carries out a password change, notifications can be sent. PMP works on the basis of password ownership and sharing. When the owner revokes the password share, or provides a new share, notifications can be sent. Through the password policy definition, you can set expiry dates for passwords. PMP can send notifications on password expiry. It can also automatically reset passwords upon expiry. Whenever passwords in PMP go in violation of the password policy defined by you, notifications can be sent. You also have the option to reset the passwords upon finding the violation. Every night at 1 a.m., PMP carries out a check to find if all the passwords stored in PMP are in sync with the ones in the actual resource. PMP tries to log into the resource using the credentials stored here. If the login attempt fails, PMP concludes that the passwords are out of sync and sends out notifications. In addition to email notifications, you can also generate a SNMP traps and syslog messages to your network management system upon the occurrence of any of these events. All operations performed in PMP are comprehensively audited. The audit trails are classified into 3 categories: Resource Audit, User Audit and Task Audit. Resource Audit presents details pertaining to all operations performed on a particular resource. Details on who performed the operation, at what time are also presented. User Audit presents details on the operations performed by a user. Task Audit presents details about the scheduled tasks created in PMP. Based on your needs, you can control the logging of audit trails. In addition, you can choose to receive real-time notifications, or alerts on the occurrence of specific events. You can leverage this functionality to integrate PMP with SIEM tools, which can thoroughly analyze and correlate the data from PMP with other network events. This results in a more secure infrastructure with an in-depth and holistic view of overall network activity. PMP provides as many as 9 reports on various aspects of password management. Password Inventory Report provides a snapshot of details about the total number of resources, passwords, resource types and users present in PMP. Besides, it provides details about the ownership of each password and information on the time at which the passwords were accessed. Password Activity Report provides details on the passwords that were most accessed during a specific time period, the ones that were least accessed, average access per day, per week, and the passwords that were frequently reset. Password Integrity Report provides details about the synchronization details of passwords stored in PMP with those in actual resources. PCI DSS Compliance Report explains the violations in your network from the requirements of Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. By properly leveraging the reports and audit trails generated by PMP, you can meet security audits and regulatory compliances such as Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA and others. PMP offers many other enterprise-class features that can be accessed from this Admin tab. In addition to the authentication mechanism of PMP, if you want to enforce a second level of authentication, you can make use of the two-factor authentication feature. The second level of authentication could be either a one-time password generated by PMP and sent to the users via email, or, if you already have a RSA Secure ID, you can integrate PMP with it for two-factor authentication. Password reset is one of the important operations performed using PMP. After resetting the password of resources or accounts in PMP, there might be requirements to carry out some follow-up action automatically. This could be done using the Password Reset Listener. For example, immediately after changing the password of a resource, you can restart its dependent services. In short, you can define any desired follow-up action as a script and PMP will simply execute that script after a password reset. For applications and scripts in your infrastructure that communicate with other applications using a password, the normal practice is to hard-code the password in a configuration file or a script. Hard-coded passwords bring with them security issues. You can eliminate the hard-coding of passwords using PMP. The applications can securely query PMP to retrieve the password. This way, the application-to-application passwords can also follow good password management practices without the trouble of manually making the updates at many places. PMP provides two flavors of API to carry out application-to-application password management. The two flavors are, a comprehensive application API based on XML, RPC over HTTPS and a command line interface for scripts over SSH. Both the forms use PKI authentication for allowing access to the PMP application through the API. The XML, RPC API also comes with a Java wrapper API to make it easy for integrating it with Java applications. Data stored in PMP database are of critical importance. In any production environment, there would be constant requirements for backing up the data for reference purposes or for disaster recovery. To achieve this, PMP provides the option to take backup of the entire database in two ways. You can create a scheduled task to take backup of the entire database at a specific interval, and store it in a secure location. If something goes wrong with the current installation, you can rely on the backup data. There is also provision to take live backup of the entire database. We make use of the replication feature of MySQL database to do the live backup. Whenever a write operation occurs in the master database, the data is replicated to the slave database. Uninterrupted access to passwords is one of the crucial requirements. PMP provides the high availability feature just to ensure this. There will be redundant PMP server and database instances. One instance will be the primary providing read-write access to the users. The other instance will act as secondary. At any point of time, data in both primary and secondary will be in sync with each other. When primary server goes down, the secondary will offer read-only access to the users. What happens to be a feature for one organization, the same becomes a hindrance for another. So, we have given total flexibility to selectively switch on and off various features on need basis. The general settings deals with this. For example, by default, when a user tries to retrieve the password of a resource, the passwords appear in plain text. If you want to force your users to provide a reason why access to the password was needed, you can enable this option by selecting the checkbox. I have covered almost all important features of PMP. Download the free trial copy and play with the features. If you want to discuss further, send a mail to support@passwordmanagerpro.com and we will schedule a call. Thanks for your time and have a good day.